Joining us right now, former presidential candidate, former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. Governor, it's good to see you this morning.
Thank you, Maria. Great to be with you.
I've been reading lots of your tweets, and we want to get to them. But first, let me get your take on the trade moves. No specific new investment restrictions against China, not singling out China, instead strengthen the CFIUS process.
I think it's a brand new form of American-Chinese ping pong that we're seeing, where both sides are trying to play against each other, make sure that they protect themselves. But ultimately, and I think people need to remember, there may be a lot of criticism thrown to Donald Trump for tariffs and all of the things that he has done to try to bring some sense of balance back. But the good news is he has everybody's undivided attention. The ultimate goal, as he has stated many times, is no tariffs whatsoever. That's true free trade, and I hope we ultimately move to that.
Yeah, Governor, we're watching the markets really react to this. It feels like it's an olive branch to China. Was there a major debate, do you think, within government about how to deal with China stealing America's technology?
Well, we've got to deal with that. I mean, they're stealing intellectual property. They've dumped products into the American marketplace and made it very difficult for American manufacturers to be competitive. And the president is taking that seriously, which, by the way, is exactly what he said he was going to do throughout the campaign. Yeah. And it's what he said he's going to do since he's been president. Yep,
you're absolutely right. Governor, we got to ask you about these reports that your daughter, White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders, is going to now get her own Secret Service protection. What a world we live in. Of course, coming after the Red Hen restaurant in Virginia refused to serve her last Friday. Democratic Congresswoman Maxine Waters calling on her supporters to harass members of the Trump administration in public. We're all outraged by all of this. As a father, do you feel this Secret Service protection is necessary?
Well, it's not so much related to the Red Hen as it is to other threats. And you got to remember, she has 3 small children, and there have been some nasty things. Peter Fonda tweeted out to millions of people that someone ought to break into her house and kidnap her children. Maria, that's not politics. That's crime.
That's crime.
Peter Fonda needs to be in jail.
Yeah, I mean, have you heard any pushback on that? I mean, have you heard what's the latest on the Peter Fonda stuff? We know what he tweeted out. Has he been, spoken to, or what does he say about his actions now?
I'm not aware of anything. I don't know. Maybe they've talked to him. But the point being is this. He continues to tweet out, even after this. He still tweeted out the most vile, vicious, hateful things toward the president and his staff. So if there's any kind of repentance and sorrow and regret for it, he certainly isn't displaying it publicly. And that's just the public stuff. Believe me, there's plenty of other stuff out there. The hatred toward this administration and just the people who work for it. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, I get it, people are fired up, but this is absurd.
We all agree about this, and we've been talking about this all morning. This has to stop in terms of the treatment of anybody that says anything positive about the Trump administration or the Trump administration itself. You agree with that, Marie?
Yeah, Governor Huckabee, this is Marie Harf here. There are people in public life who get a lot of hate, a lot of threats on Twitter, both Republicans and Democrats. Do you think that the online companies, particularly Twitter, should do a better job themselves at cracking down on the harassment, on the threats? I got so many on Twitter now that I'm not even on Twitter anymore. Do you think they can help in this process?
That's a good question. You're right.
I absolutely do, Maria. I think it's a great question that you pose. Look, I think ultimately some of these companies, whether it's Facebook or Twitter, are going to have to accept, and I don't like the government involvement. I don't like regulation. But they have moved from just being a social media platform to a public utility. I think they're going to be viewed that way. There's going to be regulation because they don't have really the guts to regulate themselves and to stop some of the more outrageous forms of indecent conduct.
I've reported harassment. It was clearly by one individual who kept setting up accounts on Instagram. They didn't do anything about it. And again, it was like, how many different ways can you call me a Nazi, which is what happened to me on Instagram, but it's the same thing on Twitter. Yeah. And they say this is speech, this is free speech. We're not gonna do anything. This isn't harassment under our guidelines, and I find that to be just balderdash. trash.
I agree.
Yeah, and anything, I mean, so, Governor, this is Mike Murphy. I'm with you in kind of staying out of let businesses run themselves, but also when there's a crime involved, which is what, when you go back to the Peter Fonda tweets, you know, it's something that I think government does have to get involved with, or the companies have to be able to police it better. And it has to go both to the left and to the right. It has to be policed equally.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Look, if there's somebody on the right and they're inciting violence against a public official's children, they need to be in the slammer. But until we start holding people accountable, until people like Peter Fonda are frog marched across a courthouse lawn and he gets the perp walk and everybody gets to see this is what happens to you when you encourage people to go and do violent things to someone's family. Until that happens, it's going to continue because there's no accountability for this nonsense. None.
Look, yeah, I mean, look at Robert De Niro. You know, every time you hear the guy, all he's talking about is, I want to punch Donald Trump. I want, you know, F this, F that. I mean, it's horrible. And sometimes the market takes care of these things also, though, because I think Robert De Niro has lost a lot of fans, and, by the way.
You know, I heard Howie Kurtz interviewing Rob Reiner, and Rob Reiner, he refers to President Trump. He uses the word treason all the time. But Governor Huckabee, Rob Reiner pointed out to Howie Kurtz, he said, this is not, he completely disagreed with what Robert De Niro said about President Trump. So I think it's really important to get that pushback, not just from people on the right, but people of their own political ilk.
Which is why it was good to see Chuck Schumer say, well, you know, this is not right what Maxine Waters said. Look, the owner of the Red Hen now, Governor, is stepping down as executive director of a local business council. You tweeted out this picture of a restaurant in New York, posting a sign saying, Sarah Sanders, welcome anytime. What kind of response have you personally gotten after that incident?
It's been amazing to see. There's a small little restaurant up in South Wells, New York, that put a sign out front saying that Sarah was welcome there anytime. I posted the picture, and it had like 40,000 comments on it. It was pretty remarkable. I think people just are tired of this kind of vitriol. And let me be very fair. Someone went and apparently threw some chicken excrement at the Red Hen restaurant, you know, in protest and screamed to make America great. You don't make America great by doing something vile like that. The owner of the Red Hen, I think what she did was despicable. I think it was disgusting, hateful, and bigoted. But retaliation by that kind of thing, that serves no one's purpose, and that person, I hope, gets arrested for doing what they did. Maybe they consider themselves a person on the right, but they're a person in the wrong.
But and what is the justification? I mean, none of this is justified on either side. But what did this president do that would cause such vitriol? It's like they just personally don't like him. I mean, for example, the immigration stuff has been going on before the president got in office.
Well, that's part of the problem, is that the media has really, you know, they don't like being called fake news, but it is fake news when they are disproportionate, when they are unbalanced, and when they don't put the story in context. President Trump is doing what he said he was going to do.
Yeah.
And they're mad at it. But I think the bigger problem is when you have people on the network calling everyone who supports him a Nazi or a racist.
Yeah.
That's wrong.
Governor,
that's crazy.
Thanks so much. Good to see you, sir. Governor Huckabee.